Picture this, a highway stretching endlessly into the horizon, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. That's where I found myself last summer, stuck in what would become the most meaningful traffic jam of my life. My name is Alex, 32 years old, a graphic designer who had recently quit my job in Seattle to pursue freelance work. I was driving my old but reliable blue Subaru down Interstate 5, heading south toward Portland for a friend's wedding. The sky was clear, my playlist was perfect, and I was making good time, until everything stopped. At first, I thought it was just the usual slowdown, the kind that resolves itself after a few minutes. But as 1 minute turned to 5, and 5 turned to 15, I realized we were dealing with something more significant. Cars stretched ahead of me, and behind me as far as I could see, a sea of metal and frustrated drivers. News came through the radio. A major accident involving several vehicles had completely blocked all southbound lanes. The estimated clearance time? Several hours, the traffic reporter said with practiced sympathy. I sighed, accepting my fate, and decided to make myself comfortable. I reclined my seat slightly, turned up my music, and was just about to call my friend to warn them I might be late when I noticed him. A man about my age was walking between the lanes of stopped cars, looking increasingly distressed. He was tall with dark curly hair, wearing jeans and a faded green t-shirt that complemented his olive skin. He seemed to be checking his watch repeatedly, then looking ahead at the endless line of vehicles with growing anxiety. As he passed my car, our eyes met briefly. He had the most expressive brown eyes I'd ever seen, currently filled with frustration and worry. I found myself rolling down my window before I could think twice about it. "Everything okay?" I called out. He stopped, seeming surprised that someone was speaking to him. "Not really," he admitted with a grimace that somehow still managed to be charming. "I have an interview in Portland in 3 hours. Or had, I guess. No way I'm making it now." "That's rough," I said sympathetically. "Where's your car?" He pointed back about half a mile. "Back there." I ran out of gas. I was so focused on making it to the interview on time that I forgot to check my fuel gauge. Now I'm stranded in the middle of nowhere with a dead phone and a missed opportunity. I'm not usually the type to invite strangers into my car. In fact, I'm typically quite cautious. But something about his genuine distress and those honest eyes made me offer without hesitation. "I have a phone charger if you need it. And, well, we're not going anywhere for a while according to the radio. You're welcome to wait in here instead of standing in the sun." He hesitated for just a moment, then smiled. A smile that, I would soon learn, could light up the darkest room. "That would be amazing, thank you. I'm Elias, by the way." "Alex," I replied, reaching across to open the passenger door. "Hop in." And that's how Elias Mendez, soon-to-be architectural consultant and complete stranger, climbed into my passenger seat during a highway shutdown that would last for nearly 5 hours. 5 hours that would change everything. As Elias settled into my passenger seat, the awkwardness I expected didn't materialize. Instead, there was an immediate ease between us, as if we'd known each other for years rather than minutes. He plugged his phone into my charger with a grateful smile and immediately called his potential employer to explain the situation. I tried not to eavesdrop, but in the confined space of my car, it was impossible not to hear his apologetic tone, his professional yet warm manner of speaking. When he hung up, his relief was palpable. "They rescheduled for tomorrow morning," he explained, running a hand through his curls. "Said these things happen. I think I caught them before they thought I was just not showing up, so that's something." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for this stranger. "So you're heading to Portland for work?" This simple question opened the floodgates to conversation. Elias, I learned, was 34, originally from New Mexico, with a master's degree in architectural design and a passion for sustainable building practices. He had been working in Seattle for the past 5 years, but was looking to relocate to Portland for its progressive approach to urban development. "What about you?" he asked, turning those attentive eyes toward me. "What brings you to this particular traffic nightmare?" I told him about my friend's wedding, about quitting my job to freelance, about my love for design that had started with drawing comic books as a kid. As we talked, the cars around us remained motionless, but time seemed to flow differently inside my Subaru. We discovered mutual interests in indie music, hiking, and obscure documentaries. We debated the best coffee shops in Seattle and laughed about similar disastrous dating experiences. "So you're single then?" he asked after I'd recounted a particularly terrible blind date involving a man who spent the entire evening talking about his extensive collection of vintage dental tools. The question hung in the air for a moment. Yeah, I admitted. Been focusing on work for a while. Dating in the age of apps is exhausting. Tell me about it. Elias agreed with a laugh. The last guy I matched with looked nothing like his profile pictures and spent our entire date trying to recruit me into his multi-level marketing scheme. The confirmation that he also dated men sent a small thrill through me that I tried to ignore. After all, we were just two strangers passing time during a traffic jam. Yet there was something in the way his eyes lingered on mine that made me wonder if he felt it too. This unexpected connection forming between us. As the second hour of our highway standstill began, the initial novelty of our situation had worn off for most drivers around us. People were getting out of their cars, stretching their legs, forming impromptu communities on the asphalt. Some looked annoyed, checking watches and making angry phone calls. Others seemed to have accepted their fate, setting up folding chairs from their trunks or sharing snacks with neighboring vehicles. Elias and I remained in my car, our conversation deepening as the afternoon sun began its descent. The confined space created an intimacy that might have taken weeks to develop under normal circumstances. He told me about growing up as the son of Mexican immigrants in a small New Mexico town, about being the first in his family to go to college, about coming out to his traditional Catholic parents at 21. They didn't speak to me for almost a year, he said quietly, looking out at the highway rather than at me. It was the loneliest time of my life. But eventually my mom called, said she missed her son. Things got better slowly after that. Now my dad even asks if I'm dating anyone when I visit. That's really brave, I told him, sharing in turn my own coming out story, less dramatic but still significant, with a supportive but confused family who needed time to adjust their expectations. These weren't casual anecdotes we were sharing. They were the kind of personal revelations that usually come after multiple dates, after establishing trust. Yet here we were, accelerating through the getting-to-know-you phase while the world outside remained at a standstill. As our conversation continued, I found myself noticing small details about Elias, the way one dimple appeared when he smiled, how he gestured expressively when talking about architecture, the small scar above his right eyebrow from a childhood biking accident. I caught him studying me too, his gaze sometimes lingering when he thought I wasn't looking. By hour 3, hunger had become a pressing concern. Fortunately, I had packed snacks for my journey, a bag of trail mix, some granola bars, and 2 bottles of water. Not exactly a feast, but enough to share. As I reached into the back seat to grab my provisions, my arm brushed against Elias's shoulder, sending an unexpected jolt of electricity through me. I fumbled with the bag, suddenly feeling like a teenager again. Sorry, I muttered, finally retrieving the snacks and placing them between us. Don't be, he replied with a smile that suggested he'd felt it too. We divided the food evenly, our fingers occasionally touching as we reached for the trail mix. The car seemed to grow smaller, warmer, more intimate as the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow through the windows. Outside, frustrated drivers honked their horns uselessly, but inside our little bubble, the world had narrowed to just the two of us. You know, Elias said thoughtfully as he finished his water. If someone had told me this morning that running out of gas would lead to the best conversation I've had in months, I would have thought they were crazy. I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the summer heat. I know what you mean. I was dreading this drive, but now. I trailed off, not quite ready to articulate what I was feeling. But now, he prompted, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart race. Before I could respond, a commotion outside broke our moment. People were pointing ahead, and a ripple of movement had begun among the previously stationary vehicles. The traffic was finally, slowly, beginning to move. Looks like they're clearing the accident, I said, feeling strangely disappointed. Our time in this suspended reality was coming to an end, but the movement was just a tease. After inching forward about 20 feet, everything stopped again. The radio informed us that while one lane was now open, it would still be at least another hour before traffic would flow normally. Rather than feeling frustrated by this news, I felt secretly relieved. I wasn't ready for my time with Elias to end. As the 4th hour of our unexpected highway companionship began, the conversation between Elias and me had evolved from getting-to-know-you exchanges to deeper discussions about life, dreams, and the paths we hadn't taken. The kind of conversations usually reserved for late nights with old friends or intimate partners. I almost became a teacher, Elias confessed, his profile illuminated by the golden hour light. I love architecture, but there was a moment in college when I seriously considered switching to education. I tutored math to pay for my textbooks, and seeing kids finally understand something they'd been struggling with, that light bulb moment, it was incredible. Why didn't you pursue it? I asked, genuinely curious about this road not taken. He shrugged, a gesture somehow both casual and profound. Family expectations, partly. My parents sacrificed so much for me to have opportunities they never had. They were so proud when I got into the architecture program. But mostly, I realized I could combine both passions. I guest lecture at community colleges now, and I'm working on a program to introduce underprivileged high school students to sustainable design. I told him about my own abandoned dream of creating graphic novels, how I'd let it slide in favor of more commercial design work. I still sketch characters sometimes, I admitted. I have this whole world built in my head, but I never seem to find the time to put it on paper. You should make the time, Elias said with unexpected intensity. Life's too short to leave your passions on the back burner. There was something about being trapped in traffic, about the strange liminal space we were inhabiting, that made his words hit harder than they might have in normal circumstances. We were literally stuck, unable to move forward, a physical manifestation of how I sometimes felt about my creative ambitions. As if reading my thoughts, Elias added, sometimes we need unexpected detours to remind us of what matters. Our eyes met, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The connection between us had moved beyond the pleasant surprise of finding someone interesting to talk to during a delay. There was something more substantial forming, something with weight and possibility. The intimacy of our conversation was mirrored by our physical proximity. In the small confines of my car, we had gradually shifted closer to each other. What had started as two strangers maintaining a respectful distance had evolved into a comfortable closeness. When Elias laughed at something I said, his knee would sometimes bump against mine. When I reached to adjust the air conditioning, my arm would brush his shoulder. Each contact, however brief, sent a current of awareness through me. Outside, the world continued its slow-motion chaos. Someone a few cars ahead had started playing music loudly from their vehicle, a Latin pop song with an infectious beat. Other stranded travelers had formed impromptu social groups, sharing food and stories. A couple was even dancing between the lanes, finding joy in the absurdity of the situation. Their laughter floated through my partially open window. They've got the right idea, Elias observed, watching the dancing couple with a smile. Making the best of things. We could join them, I suggested jokingly, though part of me wasn't entirely kidding. Elias turned to me with a mischievous glint in his eye. I'm a terrible dancer. Like, embarrassingly bad. But if you want to see a grown man with 2 left feet trying to salsa, I'm game. The idea of Elias dancing badly in the middle of a highway traffic jam made me laugh. I think I'd like to see that, actually. Maybe next time, he said, and the casual implication that there would be a next time hung between us, full of promise. As the 5th hour approached, the sky had begun to change, the clear blue deepening as evening approached. The traffic had started moving again, but at a glacial pace, stop and go, a few feet at a time. At this rate, it would be another hour at least before we reached the end of the backup. I should probably try to get back to my car soon, Elias said reluctantly as we inched forward. It's still about half a mile back. The thought of him leaving created an unexpected hollow feeling in my chest. You'll never make it to Portland tonight, I found myself saying. Even after we get through this, it'll be late. Yeah, I know. I'll have to find a motel somewhere along the way. I hesitated for a moment, then took a chance. I have a reservation at a hotel in Portland. My friend's wedding isn't until the day after tomorrow. You could. If you wanted, you could stay with me tonight. Just to save you the trouble of finding a place last minute. As soon as the words left my mouth, I worried I'd overstepped. We'd shared hours of conversation, yes, but we were still essentially strangers. What if he thought I was being too forward, or worse, creepy? But Elias didn't look uncomfortable or put off. Instead, he studied me with those expressive eyes, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be, I assured him quickly. The room has 2 beds. And honestly, after spending 5 hours talking to you, I think I can safely say you're not an axe murderer. He laughed at that, the sound warm and genuine. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? But only if you let me buy you dinner as thanks. Deal, I said, feeling a flutter of excitement at the prospect of extending our time together beyond this unexpected traffic encounter. As we continued our slow progress forward, our conversation shifted to making plans, where we might eat dinner, how to handle getting his car to Portland, what time his interview was the next morning. The practical details of extending our connection beyond this highway limbo. Each decision, each small plan we made together, felt significant, bridges being built between our separate lives. Finally, after nearly 5.5 hours, we approached the scene of the accident. Emergency vehicles were still present, their lights flashing as they cleared the last of the wreckage. The sight was sobering, a reminder that while we had found an unexpected connection in this delay, it had come at the cost of someone else's misfortune. I hope everyone's okay, Elias said quietly as we passed, his compassion another quality I found myself admiring. Once past the accident site, traffic began to flow normally again. The sudden ability to drive at regular highway speeds felt almost jarring after hours of stillness and incremental movement. We decided on a plan. I would drive Elias back to his car, follow him to the nearest gas station where he could fill a can for his vehicle, then we would continue on to Portland in our separate cars, meeting at my hotel. As I pulled over to let him out near his stranded car, there was a moment of awkwardness. The spell of our confined intimacy temporarily broken as we prepared to part, if only briefly. So, I'll see you in about an hour? I confirmed as he unbuckled his seatbelt. Definitely, he said, then hesitated. Before I could react, he leaned over and kissed me lightly on the cheek. Thank you, Alex. Not just for the ride and the phone charger, but for making what could have been a miserable day into something I'll never forget. The spot where his lips had touched my skin seemed to tingle as I watched him walk back to his car. I touched my cheek briefly, smiling to myself. What had started as a frustrating traffic delay had turned into something entirely unexpected, a connection I hadn't been looking for, but now couldn't imagine not having found. As I put my car back in drive, ready to follow Elias to the gas station and then onward to Portland, I couldn't help but think about the strange serendipity of it all. If not for an accident, if not for his empty gas tank, if not for my impulse to offer help to a stranger, our paths would never have crossed. Sometimes the most meaningful journeys happen when we're forced to stop moving forward. Sometimes the best connections form when our carefully planned routes are disrupted. And sometimes, just sometimes, being stuck is exactly where we need to be. The evening air was cool against my face as I followed Elias's now-functioning car toward Portland. The highway stretched before us, no longer an obstacle but a path forward, together. Whatever tomorrow would bring, whether this was the beginning of something lasting or simply a beautiful detour in both our lives, I was grateful for the roadblock that had brought Elias into my passenger seat and, quite possibly, into my heart. Total _char_count, 17,838.